Money is the biggest taboo topic in the world, and it's really corrupting so many of our lives, and it's unnecessary. I mean, I always think it's interesting, which is we all know we need to save more money to make it in the world, and yet none of us do it. And why would you ever do something that's against your own best interest? Well, there's going to be a psychological reason. That's not going to have anything to do with the facts. If you don't know yet that you need to earn more money than you spend, then, this is not the podcast for you, because that's like just the fucking basics. Hi, my name is Heather Pellier, and I grew up in Washington, D.C. I later relocated to California, Los Angeles, and now I'm in New York. I've had a long career. I started out in Hollywood, and I worked in the entertainment business for probably a decade. Then I eventually moved in and started a tech company where I had taken some break and became a therapist for 2 years. I know that's a little complicated, but my career has been interesting. I had a fashion company. I've written some books, all really attached to something that's going on with me. I grew up with a mother who was a stone carver. That's an unusual thing, but every artist in the world is an entrepreneur. And I think that we don't talk about it that way. They're the first gig economy workers, really. They're working for themselves. And then my father also was an entrepreneur. He was in the restaurant business, and he was also in tech, and now he's in real estate. So I grew up with entrepreneurs who were financially chaotic, up, down, up, down. It was a lot of craziness. And, that's really how I handled my finance. It was a feast or famine. I remember one time saying to somebody, well, I'm just going to spend it all. It's kind of like putting King Kong on the end of the Titanic. I'm just going to, and go down in like a ball of flames, because that was how it is. You're going to have all of it or you're going to have none of it. And so that kind of thinking is part of why financial health and wellness and security is so critically important, because I want to share my failures. And they are so many, it's kind of embarrassing. It's a nightmare. Everything that I did wrong was avoidable. Everything I did wrong was a lack of education and fear. Fear drives us, around the bend. And we cannot make good financial choices when we're afraid. It is impossible. And I have lived with chronic fear, and very often chronic fear becomes just our normal. We don't even realize how much anxiety we're carrying. We don't even feel it anymore, particularly if you grew up in a house like mine. My mother had like a wicked temper. It was erratic. It was difficult. Money was unclear. She spent 10 years with somebody who made money illegally, who was in some people would think of him as a pioneer in the marijuana business, but back then that was like a totally illegal business. And so, I was not taught about values or the quality of how you make money or being responsible. Those are high cash industries, right? So I had no idea what was going on. And interesting, a lot of I don't know what you would call it, kind of like all the fantasy things. People are like, well, how did you go to Aspen when you had a wood burning stove? And that was some of the priorities, right? We're going to go skiing, but we're not going to have you go to the doctor. And so that kind of mixed messaging can make people crazy. So who am I now? So I have written books. I'm an author. I do public talks on money and the psychology of money and how that is the critical frontier for the world of finance today. I am a nationally licensed insurance broker. And I promise you, when I had a fashion company, everybody wanted to sit next to me. When I became an insurance agent, silence, crickets. Nobody wanted to sit next to me. And then now I'm also have been working at the University of Chicago studying the psychology of finance. And I've started a new company called Outset Financial. And it's a merger of financial literacy and the psychology of money to teach you how to unlock your financial potential and to stop being stuck and taking your own survival into account. I mean, I always think it's interesting, which is we all know we need to save more money to make it in the world, and yet none of us do it. And why would you ever do something that's against your own best interest? Well, there's going to be a psychological reason. That's not going to have anything to do with the facts. If you don't know yet that you need to earn more money than you spend, then, this is not the podcast for you, because that's like just the frickin' basics. And you cannot change that paradigm. So, this magical thinking was a big thing for me. All of us sort of go like, well, just magically, I'll wake up at 70 and I'll have enough money to keep me alive till I'm 90. But when you're young, you think someday something's going to happen, and that's not how it works. You know, what's going to happen is you're going to go broke. What's going to happen is you're going to have less. It's not, we don't mature into like some financially competent person. It's not something that like grows like your toenails. You know, it's actually something you have to be active in. You have to realize you don't know what you don't know. You have to work on your shame. And for me, I had to work on a lot of my feelings of unworthiness and feelings of like, why not me, you know, of jealousy, of envy. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And, you know, that's who I am right now. I have a daily financial wellness practice that I think everybody should have. I have classes and courses on really how to unlock your money fears so that you can build the prosperity you want. Because I think we have got to start changing this inequality factor. I mean, it really is getting kind of like the Game of Thrones. Like there's 1 million people, or very few, 20 million people, in fact, in the United States who are in that 1%. And then there's all the rest of us. And that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, if you think about it, there's 330 million people in the United States, 329. So the percentages are terrible. So I want you to stay on this journey with me. It's really important. I'm not alone. One of the worst things, and one of the things that killed me and hurt my children and just made all of my financial problems that much worse. If they could be worse, by the way, they could be. You think things can't get worse, they can. Is that I was isolated. I had so much fear and so much shame, and I didn't know who to talk to. I couldn't even like bring it up because, you know, the first thing sometimes good intentioned people would say to me is, well, money doesn't matter, or, oh, you have your health, or, oh, just focus on your kids. And I'm like, well, if I can't feed them, how can I focus on them? Or if I'm worried I'm going to lose my house, how can I enjoy them? It was the advice given of people who just don't know what it's like to actually not have enough and to fear that they're not going to have enough tomorrow and, God forbid, into the future.
So Heather, you said you were 300 million in debt, like you and your family. That's
Yes.
a massive number.
No, not 300 million. That's what we had been worth.
You were
Right.
300 million.
Right. And then we like went down to negative 25.
So negative 25 million, which 300 to 25 million kind of feels the same to any regular person like us.
Right.
How did you get out of that?
I'm going to tell you straight up that it was not a straight arrow. I didn't invent anything. So the first thing is I made it worse. You know, I overspent. I didn't get realistic about my finances. I didn't like hunker down. I had a lot of magical thinking that I could just like hit it out of the ballpark again. Like, oh, if you did that once, you can do it again. That's not the case. That's not true. I have a really good ex-husband who's smart and helped a lot in figuring it out. And I also had a stepfather who had guaranteed our debt. And so he was helping me out to sort of keep us, you know, kind of afloat. I started 3 different companies. I sold all of my clothes. I sold all of my jewelry. You know, I melted down all of our silver. I mean, I did a lot of crazy stuff to sort of keep everybody glued together. And I ultimately, the way I really ended up making money is in real estate. I actually wasted a lot of money when I was trying to make something out of nothing. You know, if I could go back and say to myself, what should you do? I should have like gone and gotten a real estate license, or gone and gotten a job where I was always going to make commission. Anything that's outside of being an hourly worker would have been better, because the interest on that kind of money is crazy. So I had opportunities other people aren't going to be able to have. I was able to negotiate with the bank. I was able to negotiate with my stepfather to pay off the debt in some ways. And when we got it down to a certain point so that the interest wasn't accruing at a wild rate, you know, these are things that are, you know, specific to my circumstances. And then real estate, selling a house, you know, that I only had a limited amount of mortgage on, that we made a fortune on. That was like a big chunk. And it was kind of just chunking it out. You know, I had a fashion company, and then I wrote a book, and it's just little by little. And, you know, a lot of it did lean into my kid's father. You know, we had started another company together that he was running. So there was waiting for that to have an exit strategy. And it took 12 years. And, that's a long 12 years to really feel like you're living in fear, not faith. I mean, I would say that I could go back to and just say, like, to get really into the moment is, I think, critical. If I would have way more success today, if I had been able to be super conscientious about every dollar, I was terrified to open the mail. I had like a phobia about it. And I would have to hire somebody actually to come and open my mail because otherwise I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. I know that sounds crazy, right? Like you're broke and you need somebody, to help you open your bills. There were like certain, literally like panic attacks I would have over things like that. And, it's continued to this day. Part of my daily financial wellness is that I have to open the mail because I have so much leftover fear and stress from that. And maybe there would have been nothing in the mail, do you know what I mean? But it just became, and it was actually something interesting that my mom also had. In hindsight, I was able to look back on that. So I wish I could give everybody like a great, go save more and save less. I think you have to start to think about like, what is every opportunity? We tend to block ourselves in. A great thing about having parents who are entrepreneurs is I do know that I can create something out of nothing. Like writing a book, that's a sweat equity idea. That's not I have to invest in doing it, because the help that you need for 4 kids under that age meant that I wasn't going to go to an office and make a specific salary every day. Like that wasn't going to be an option to me. And I also didn't have any family to come in and help with any of the babysitting. And that is one of the great things about resilience is you do what you need to do in the day and in the moment to get through, and that keeps you moving forward. When we have a lot of time to think, we're overthinking, we're not in action. And the fear of not being able to survive propelled me into taking some risks I probably shouldn't, in hindsight, maybe have taken. So it's worked out really well for me. I'm going to be able to give you a lot of incredible things I've learned from what I did wrong, from what I would do differently. These are hard things, but you can actually get out of debt a lot faster than we think. And that is a really big thing to learn. I mean, that kind of debt, I thought I would die, homeless or broke or living in some like tiny apartment somewhere. And that hasn't happened at all. So you can get into debt. That's a huge thing to know. You can get into debt faster than you think you can. Where we get caught up is like the keeping up with the Joneses, the lifestyle issues. Lifestyle creep is such a big thing. It's all the small, like snacking amounts of money. Like, I don't care what you spend your money on. I have no judgment about that. I only care that you know what you're spending your money on, that you're aware of like what I call sort of leakage, like all of these little places where we're leaking out money all the time that we're not even paying attention to. Those are the things that are going to really hurt your long-term financial health. When you go from that high of wealth, your friends are also in that high of wealth. So I had to I lost friends, not in the sense that like they didn't care about me, but like we just couldn't do the same things anymore. And the faster I showed up for that, the faster I said, I'm not going to try to make it on that trip. I'm not going to try to go to that event. I'm not going to show up at that kind of dinner or go to that restaurant or do any of these activities that I could afford to do previously, the faster I was able to get out of my debt. It was like kind of trying to hold on to a lifestyle I couldn't afford and hold on to participating in a world that I couldn't afford to be in anymore. Caused me a lot of pain and hurt my ego and hurt my relationships because I was just sort of trying to hold on with my fingernails to something that I really had no ability to be a part of. Thank you so much for being on this podcast and listening to my story. It's a little convoluted. I understand that, but I'd love to hear from you. So please get in touch. I want this to be a shared experience. I think that money is the biggest taboo topic in the world, and it's really corrupting so many of our lives, and it's unnecessary. But it is the longest relationship we have. From birth to death costs us money. So what this podcast is about is it's a financial journey. We're going to look at the psychology of money. We're going to look at practical facts around money. I'm going to tell you secrets of lifestyles of the rich and famous around money. I'm going to reveal all sorts of issues people have in marriage and money, how people are hiding, stealing, all the things you can look for to build financial safety, security, and ultimately a rich life. So I'm excited to have you on this journey with me, and I look forward to our next episode.